The Witch, Flattened. A fairy tale. One day, while walking through the forest, a beautiful witch was captured by a giant ogre. The ogre was big enough that it held the struggling witch in one hand as it carried her deeper and deeper into the forest. The witch struggled, kicked, threw magic spells, and even bit the ogre, but to no avail. Soon they came to a clearing with a tall stack of mattresses like a skyscraper, reaching impossibly up into the sky. The pile of mattresses looked like it came out of a different fairy tale, the tale of the princess and the pea. But in this tale, the ogre would be the princess, and the witch would be the pea. The ogre, with a lot of obvious thought and care, lifted all but the bottom 3 mattresses up, placed the witch in the gap, and laid them down on her. It had placed her in the center of the 3rd mattress, and, satisfied with its work, the ogre climbed to the top of the enormously tall stack of mattresses. The pile was so tall that it took a few minutes for the ogre to climb to the top, where it laid down, adjusted its position a bit to get comfortable, and then went to sleep. The pile of mattresses and the ogre were too heavy for the witch to move, and she was stuck on her back between them. It was somehow soft and comforting and solid, and despite her fear, the witch found herself relaxing into the experience a little. The mattresses were enchanted to flatten things in a very particular way. The magic of the mattresses was such that the witch was pressed like a flower in a book. Instead of being squished, she retained the shape of her outline and was even still recognizable, but she became more and more flat as the night wore on and as the ogre slept. About halfway through the night, the witch got worried and angry and annoyed and tried to call for help, but she couldn't draw a breath into her flat body. "There is no one here to save me," she thought to herself, and then decided to relax back into the experience. The moon came up, and in between the enchanted mattresses, under the ogre, she became so flat that she went from being like a pressed flower to a polished surface. If you had lifted the mattresses off the witch, she would have reflected light like a bright mirror, and you would have been able to see your reflection in her. The night wore on, and the witch became so flat that the laws of Newtonian physics, of gravity and force and cause and effect, broke down. She became relativistic, and an hour later could only be understood as undefined potentials, like Schrödinger's cat. Her surface was superconducting, and the voltage difference between her toes and the crown of her head approached infinity. Her state of being flipped in and out as potentialities shifted. She stopped existing for infinitesimal moments, which made the witch feel like she was fluttering softly like a butterfly. Morning came, and the ogre climbed down off the pile. It lifted the mattresses off of the witch. Suddenly observed, she collapsed into a wave state. The ogre squinted at the witch because it had trouble seeing her. The witch no longer really had any color. The ogre reached out for her shoulder to touch her, but the witch was still superconducting. and a full bolt of lightning arced off her lips and struck the index finger of the ogre, who jerked back with the shock. The ogre's heart stopped, and as it died, its last reflex brought the burning fingertip into its mouth. It stood up and then fell backwards like a tree, seeming to take forever to hit the ground. It made an enormous crash when it hit. Still lying on the mattress next to the dead ogre, the witch started regaining a third dimension, and, paper thin, she said, "What the heck?" Her voice was like a rustling of leaves, and she looked like a rotoscope animation, because she was still flat like a pressed flower and winking in and out of existence. Maybe a half hour later, the witch was able to get up. She creaked softly like the pages of an opening book as she got to her feet and started to walk tiredly home. The end.